The smoke curled upward like a living creature, swallowing the sky, the building, and every hope of escape as people screamed and scattered across the bright daytime street. Cars slammed their brakes, sirens wailed in the distance, and a thick, suffocating darkness rolled out from the shattered doorway of Halveth Industries. Nobody dared to go in, nobody except one man, Alan Morrow, a grease-stained single dad who had only come to drop off a repaired delivery van, felt his legs move before his mind did. Because inside that info, someone was crying for help, and even though he had every reason to walk away, something inside him refused. It was the same instinct that had kept him alive, kept him fighting for his daughter, kept him believing that life couldn't stay cruel forever. And as he sprinted through the flames toward the trapped woman in the corner office, he had no idea that this moment, this one impossible act, would flip his entire world upside down. If you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness. Your support truly helps these stories reach more hearts. The fire roared behind him like a monster made of heat and fury, but Arlen didn't stop running. His lungs burned, his arms trembled, and ash coated his face until he looked like he was carved from smoke itself. He didn't know who the woman was, only that she was alive, slumped on the floor, coughing and gasping for air. Her heels were broken, her white blouse streaked with soot, and the sunlight filtering through. The collapsing windows turned her tears into glistening tracks against her skin. He knelt, lifted her into his arms, and felt her clutch his shirt with the last of her strength. She whispered something he couldn't hear over the crackle of burning beams, but her fear pierced him like a knife. He tightened his grip, tucked her head against his shoulder, and ran. The way he came, shielding her body with his own as flaming debris crashed around them. When they burst through the exit and into the sunlight, he fell to his knees in the middle of the street, placing her gently on the pavement as firefighters swarmed the area. Cameras flashed, people screamed. Someone shouted, "That's the CEO." But Arlen didn't care about that. He only cared that she was breathing. Her name was Savra Halen, a woman whose face appeared on magazines, billboards, and financial newspapers. She ruled a company worth billions. She wasn't someone Arlen should ever have gotten close enough to touch, and yet her fingers clung to his wrist, like he was the only solid thing left in her world. As paramedics hovered, she opened her eyes slowly, blinking through the thick haze of smoke. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for her first words. The firefighters, the assistants, the crowd, the media. They wanted a statement, a thank you, some CEO-like command. But instead, she looked directly at Arlen, eyes full of haunting confusion and fragile hope, and her voice, barely above a whisper, trembled with something deeper than gratitude. Why did you come back for me? No one else ever does." Those words were not what anyone expected. Not him. Not the employees, not the cameras recording every second. Something in them didn't sound like a CEO at all. They sounded like someone who knew abandonment too well. And Arlen, who had spent years feeling left behind by the world, suddenly saw her not as a powerful leader, but as a human being who desperately needed someone to stay. The paramedics carried her away, but her gaze lingered on him, as if she was memorizing the face of the man who didn't hesitate when everyone else did. Arlen didn't plan to see her again. He assumed the world of polished executives and expensive suits would swallow her up, leaving him only with the memory of smoke and trembling hands. He returned to his job at a small auto repair shop, a worn-down building with peeling paint and a single flickering bulb above the entrance. His daughter Merla, 8 years old, with bright hazel eyes that never quite lost their sadness, rushed into his arms the second he entered their tiny rented apartment. She smelled like crayons and cheap shampoo, the kind he bought in travel-size bottles to save money. Arlen pressed a kiss to her forehead as she asked why he looked extra smoky, and he simply told her that Daddy had a long day. He didn't want her to worry, didn't want her to know how close he had come to never coming home. But news spreads fast, especially when a billionaire CEO nearly dies, and a single father with nothing to his name becomes an unexpected hero. The next morning, Savra Halen herself walked into the auto shop, her hair tied back, her clothes simple, her face marked by faint bruises and fresh resolve. The shop fell silent as she approached him. Everyone assumed she had come to offer money, publicity, maybe a reward. But her purpose was much quieter, much more personal. She asked if she could talk to him alone, and he reluctantly stepped outside, wiping grease from his hands. She thanked him, yes, but not with the glossy, practiced gratitude of someone used to cameras. She thanked him with the raw, trembling voice of a woman whose life had been saved in more ways than one. She admitted that the fire wasn't an accident, it was negligence from someone she trusted, and in the days leading up to it, she had felt like she was drowning under pressure, surrounded by people who only valued her title, not her humanity. When the fire trapped her, she had truly believed nobody would come back through that door, because in her life, people didn't. Yet Arlen, a stranger with nothing to gain, had run toward her without hesitation. She wanted to know why, and Arlen, staring down at the ground, said simply that he couldn't watch someone die when he knew he still had strength left in his body to change the outcome. He didn't need a reason beyond that. For the first time in years, Savra smiled. A real smile, one that softened the sharpness of her CEO exterior and made her look almost young. She asked if he needed anything, any help, any support for what he had done. But Arlen shook his head. He told her he only wanted a quiet life for his daughter, one where she could grow up without constantly seeing him struggle. Savra didn't argue, didn't insist or push. She only asked if she could meet Mela someday because she wanted to thank the little girl whose father had risked everything for a stranger. Over the next few days, Savra visited the shop more than once. She didn't come with security or assistants or reporters. She came alone, sometimes in clothes that still smelled faintly of smoke, sometimes with files tucked under her arm. She watched Arlen work, noticing how he fixed cars with careful hands, how he treated every customer with patience, how he never raised his voice. She learned that he worked 2 shifts, slept very little, and spent his evenings teaching Mela how to draw butterflies on their kitchen table. She learned that he had once dreamed of opening his own garage, but life had beaten that dream into dust. And despite her world being one of power and luxury, she found herself drawn to the quiet strength he didn't even know he had. One afternoon, she visited their apartment. Mela was shy at first, hiding behind her father's leg, but Savra knelt, spoke gently, and offered her a small butterfly clip she kept in her purse, a piece of bright yellow plastic that made Mela smile wide. They spent the afternoon talking, laughing softly, sharing stories neither expected to share. And for the first time in a long time, Arlen felt something blooming inside him that he had forgotten existed: hope. But not everything moved toward peace. Rumors began circulating in Savra's company. Executives whispered about why the CEO was spending time with a nobody. Some questioned her judgment. Others tried to manipulate the situation for their gain. One particular ambitious board member orchestrated a meeting where they suggested distancing the company from Arlen, implying that his presence might make her look vulnerable. Savra listened to it all in stony silence before standing up and telling them that vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was humanity. And humanity was something the company had lacked for too long. Still, the pressure weighed heavily on her. Arlen could see it in the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was looking. One day, when she visited the shop, she confessed that she was considering stepping down, not because she couldn't handle the job, but because she felt trapped in a world that demanded perfection instead of sincerity. Arlen listened quietly, feeling a pang in his chest. He told her she didn't have to carry the burden alone, that asking for help wasn't defeat. She stared at him for a long moment, eyes shimmering with unspoken emotion. But before things could change for the better, something shook their fragile calm. A news story broke, twisting Arlen's rescue into a fabricated publicity stunt. Reporters swarmed the auto shop, cornering him, accusing him of working with the CEO to gain fame or money. Mela cried when she saw strangers outside their apartment. Arlen felt his world collapsing, the weight of shame pressing down on him, even though he had done nothing wrong. Savra rushed to his home the moment she heard, apologizing with shaking hands, furious at the lies being spread. Arlen tried to reassure her, but the truth was he felt broken. He had saved her life, and somehow, people still found a way to turn his goodness into something dark. The next day, Savra held a company-wide press conference. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward, and the entire city watched as she stepped to the microphone. She told the world the truth, that Arlen Morrow risked his life without expecting a single reward, and that the rumors were cruel distortions born from jealousy and fear. She declared publicly that she admired him, trusted him, and owed him a debt that went deeper than corporate politics. Her voice shook as she defended him, not as a CEO protecting an image, but as a woman protecting someone who had brought humanity back into her life. That speech changed everything. Suddenly, people saw Arlen differently, not as a poor mechanic or a publicity tool, but as a man whose courage and sincerity never wavered.